Hey everyone, I don't know where else to turn, so I'm here. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. I've seen so many stories about cheating on here, and each time, I'd shake my head, thinking, that'll never be me. Well, here I am. My wife, Jessica, and I have been married for 5 years. We met in college, and it was one of those whirlwind romances. You know the kind where everything just falls into place? She was smart, funny, and drop-dead gorgeous. Honestly, I thought I hit the jackpot. We got married right after graduation, and things were great at first. We both had solid jobs, bought a house, and started planning for kids. I really thought we were going to make it. But the last few months, something shifted. I noticed she was pulling away. It wasn't anything major at first, just little things like being more protective of her phone, spending more time out with friends, and, of course, our sex life started to fall apart. I tried to talk to her about it, but every time I did, she'd get defensive, saying I was imagining things or that I was being paranoid. Maybe I was overreacting, I thought, but deep down, I knew something was off. I just never imagined it would be this. Looking back, I guess the signs were always there, but I didn't want to believe them. I mean, who wants to think their wife might be cheating, right? It all started with Jessica's sudden need for space. She told me she needed to focus on herself and her hobbies more. I didn't think much of it at first. It sounded like a normal phase. She began going out more often, claiming she was just catching up with friends or having girls' nights that seemed to happen almost every weekend. Then came the phone. Her phone was always within arm's reach, even when we were just watching TV. And when it buzzed, she would pick it up so fast, like it was on fire. Sometimes I'd glance over at the screen, and she'd immediately tilt it away from me. If I asked about it, she'd snap at me, saying it was just her friends, and I was being too insecure. And the excuses? They just kept coming. One night, I planned a surprise dinner for her after she'd had another one of her mysterious, long days. I waited until almost 10 p.m., and when she finally walked through the door, her clothes were a little disheveled, and she looked exhausted. When I asked where she had been, she gave me this half-assed story about staying late at work and then getting drinks with some coworkers. She even accused me of being controlling when I pushed for details. "Why are you grilling me like this?" she snapped. "Can't a woman have a life outside of her marriage?" What really got me, though, was the sudden change in how she treated me. I mean, I get that relationships go through ups and downs, but this was different. She was cold, distant, and flat-out rude sometimes. The Jessica I married would never have spoken to me the way she started to. She'd brush off my attempts to connect, and when I'd try to bring up the lack of intimacy, she'd hit me with, "Not everything is about sex, you know?" But it wasn't just that. It was like she didn't even want to be around me anymore. I started to question myself. Was I doing something wrong? Was I not enough for her anymore? I began giving her more space, hoping things would improve. But the more distance I gave her, the farther apart we seemed to grow. Then, one night, while she was supposedly out with her girlfriends, I got a text from Emily, one of her closest friends, asking if everything was okay. I told her, "Yeah, Jess is out with you tonight, right?" I'll never forget the pause before Emily replied, "No, we haven't hung out in weeks." That was the moment I knew something was seriously wrong. I couldn't just ignore it anymore. The doubt had been gnawing at me for months, but now, I was certain, Jessica was lying to me. That text from Emily haunted me all night. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously off. Jessica came home around midnight, smelling like she bathed in cheap cologne and giving me the same tired excuses about how the night ran late. I didn't confront her right then. Instead, I played dumb and acted like everything was fine. But inside, I felt like I was spiraling. I had to know for sure. The next day, while Jessica was at work, I decided to check her phone. Now, I've never been the type to invade someone's privacy, and this felt like a betrayal of my own. But at that point, I didn't care. I had to get to the bottom of this. But, of course, Jessica had a passcode. She had never had one before, so this was new. That alone felt like another punch to the gut. I tried a few guesses, her birthday, our anniversary, even her favorite numbers, but nothing worked. I was starting to feel desperate. I needed proof, and I wasn't going to get it from her phone. That's when I remembered her laptop. She used it all the time, and I knew she never locked it. Maybe I could find something there. Sure enough, when I opened it, she had left her email logged in. I went straight to her inbox, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just the usual work emails, some shopping receipts, but then I saw an email from someone named Brad. I didn't know a Brad. The subject line was just a heart emoji, and I felt my stomach drop as I clicked on it. The email was short, but it said everything I needed to know. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Can't wait to see you again soon. Hugs and kisses. I just sat there, staring at the screen. My entire body went numb. This was it, the confirmation I had dreaded. I had been right all along. Jessica was cheating on me, and it wasn't just some emotional thing. She was sleeping with this guy, and she'd been lying to my face for who knows how long. I felt sick, angry, devastated. Every possible emotion hit me at once. I wanted to scream, to punch something, but I couldn't even move. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, was sneaking around with some guy while I sat at home, trusting her. I couldn't believe how blind I'd been, how many excuses I'd made for her behavior. After the initial shock, my anger started to rise. I scrolled through more of her emails, finding weeks' worth of exchanges between her and Brad. They'd been meeting up regularly, on nights when she claimed she was working late or out with her friends. They even joked about how easy it was to fool me. I couldn't believe the level of deception. It felt like everything I knew about my life had been a lie. I closed the laptop and just sat there, my heart pounding, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do now? That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running everything through my mind over and over. I knew I couldn't just keep pretending. Every time I looked at Jessica, all I could see was her with him, Brad. My mind was on fire, imagining what they'd done, how they must have laughed about how easy I was to deceive. By morning, I had made up my mind. I had to confront her. Jessica got up like any other day, casually humming as she made her coffee, completely oblivious to the fact that I knew everything. I watched her from across the room, my heart pounding, my hands clenched into fists. How could she act so normal after everything she'd done? How could she look me in the eyes and not feel guilty? I waited until she was about to leave for work before I said anything. She was gathering her things when I finally spoke up, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "Jess, we need to talk." She turned around, her smile fading when she saw the look on my face. "What's wrong?" she asked, sounding defensive already. I took a deep breath. "I know about Brad." Her reaction was immediate, and honestly, it was exactly what I expected. First, she went pale, her eyes widening in shock. Then, almost instantly, she shifted into defense mode. "What are you talking about? Brad? Who's Brad?" I could feel my anger bubbling up, but I tried to stay calm. "Don't play dumb, Jess. I found the emails. I know everything." There was a long, tense silence. She stared at me, probably trying to figure out how much I really knew. Then, she let out a frustrated sigh and crossed her arms. "Okay, fine," she snapped. "Yeah, I've been seeing someone, but it's not like that. It's not serious." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Not serious?" I repeated, my voice shaking. "You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back, and you're telling me it's not serious?" She rolled her eyes like I was overreacting. "Look, it's just sex, okay? It doesn't mean anything. You've been so distant lately, and I needed something. I needed someone who actually cared about me." That hit me like a slap in the face. She was blaming me? After everything she had done? I felt the rage rising in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm, even though I wanted to scream. "You needed someone? What about me? I've been here, trying to make this work, while you've been out fucking some guy behind my back." She flinched at my words but didn't back down. "Well, maybe if you hadn't been so focused on work, or if you actually paid attention to me, I wouldn't have had to look somewhere else." That was it. Any chance of saving this conversation was gone. "You're unbelievable," I said quietly, shaking my head. "I loved you, Jess. I trusted you." Her face softened for a moment, but it was too late. The damage was done. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but it didn't matter." Sorry wasn't going to fix this. After she said, I'm sorry, I just stood there, feeling like the world had come crashing down on me. Sorry wasn't going to undo months of lies, the betrayal, or the humiliation I felt. The room was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. I was waiting, hoping, for her to say more, to at least try to explain herself, but she just stood there, arms crossed, looking more irritated than remorseful. That's it? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. That's all you have to say? You're sorry? Jessica let out an annoyed sigh and tossed her bag onto the table. What do you want me to say? I already told you. It didn't mean anything. I'm sorry you found out this way, but it's not like I don't care about you. I just needed, I don't know, something else? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like she was trying to minimize the whole thing, as if sneaking around and having an affair was some minor inconvenience I should just brush off. Something else? I repeated, my voice rising. You've been lying to my face for months, and now you're acting like this is no big deal? Do you even hear yourself? Her face twisted with frustration. You're making this way bigger than it needs to be. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I wasn't getting what I needed from you. I'm not going to stand here and let you blame me for everything. I couldn't take it anymore. The anger that had been simmering inside me for weeks boiled over. Blame you? Who else am I supposed to blame? Jess? You've been lying to me. You've been with him. You've been coming home to me every night, pretending like nothing's wrong while you're fucking someone else. She flinched at my words but still wouldn't back down. You're not perfect, you know, she snapped. You've been checked out for a long time. Always working late, barely paying attention to me. What did you expect me to do? And there it was. She was trying to make this my fault, as if my long hours at work, the stress I'd been dealing with to support us, somehow justified her cheating. It felt like she was twisting the knife even deeper, and I couldn't believe how cold she had become. I felt something break inside me. All the anger, the betrayal, the hurt, it all hit me at once. I looked at her, this woman I had loved so deeply for so long, and I barely recognized her anymore. I can't do this, I whispered, my voice hoarse. I can't even look at you right now. Her eyes widened, and for a second, I thought I saw a flicker of regret. But then she just shrugged, like it didn't matter. Fine, she muttered, turning toward the door. If you want me to go, I'll go. But don't act like you're innocent in all of this. I watched her walk out, the door slamming behind her. And just like that, everything we had built together was shattered. When the door slammed shut, the silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for a few minutes, frozen in place, trying to process everything. My wife, my Jessica, had just walked out on me after blaming me for her affair. My mind was racing, replaying everything she had said. How did we end up here? How did the woman I loved become so cold, so dismissive of what we had? I sank down onto the couch, staring blankly at the wall. The anger that had fueled our confrontation was gone, and all that was left was a hollow emptiness. I should have felt relief that she was gone, but instead, I just felt lost. I didn't know what to do next, and the weight of the situation came crashing down on me. This wasn't just a fight. This was the end of everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I reached for my phone, scrolling through our old messages. There were pictures from trips we took, inside jokes we'd shared, and little "I love you" texts that now felt like lies. I didn't even know how long she had been with Brad. Was it weeks, months, longer? I felt sick thinking about it. How many times had she come home to me after being with him, smiling like everything was fine? The reality of her betrayal was too much. I tried to distract myself with work, with TV, with anything, but nothing helped. My thoughts kept spiraling back to her, to what she had done, and to the wreckage of our marriage. I felt like a fool, like the biggest idiot in the world for trusting her. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined her with Brad, laughing at me behind my back. I kept hearing her words, the way she dismissed everything like it didn't matter. The pain was overwhelming, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to handle it. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face anyone. Not yet. I spent the day in a daze, wandering through the house, seeing reminders of her everywhere. The picture of us from our wedding, the anniversary card she had written just a few months ago, her clothes still hanging in the closet. It felt like a cruel joke. How could everything look so normal when my life was falling apart? By the afternoon, I knew I needed help. I called my best friend, Mike, and asked if he could come over. I hadn't told him about the affair yet. I hadn't told anyone. But as soon as he walked in and saw my face, he knew something was wrong. "What's going on, man?" he asked, concerned. I tried to keep it together, but as soon as I opened my mouth, everything came spilling out. The affair, the lies, the confrontation. Mike just listened, letting me get it all out. When I was done, he didn't say much, just that he was sorry and that I didn't deserve any of this. I appreciated his support, but nothing could change the fact that my marriage was over. In the days that followed, I barely saw Jessica. She stayed at a friend's house, claiming she needed space to think things over. But I knew what that meant. She was probably with Brad, figuring out their next move while I was left picking up the pieces. The house, once full of her presence, now felt like a graveyard. Every room a reminder of what we'd lost. I'd always thought that if something like this happened, I'd know exactly what to do. But the truth is, when you're in it, when the person you've loved for years betrays you in such a deep way, you're left scrambling. Half of me wanted to fight for our marriage, to sit down and talk it out, to figure out where we went wrong. But the other half? The other half wanted to erase every memory of her and move on as quickly as possible. She called me a few days later, asking if we could meet. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, but I wasn't ready to hear her excuses. Still, I agreed. Maybe part of me was hoping she'd show some real regret, some real effort to fix what she'd broken. But when we sat down at a coffee shop that afternoon, it was clear she hadn't come to apologize. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, stirring her coffee nervously. I don't think we're right for each other anymore." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "What do you mean, we're not right for each other? After everything we've been through, you're just giving up?" She sighed, like she was the one who was exhausted by all of this. "I'm not giving up. I'm just being realistic. We've been drifting apart for a while now, and I didn't mean for things to happen the way they did with Brad. But, I don't know, maybe it was a sign." "A sign?" I nearly laughed. "You cheated on me, Jess. You didn't even try to work on this. You just ran off and found someone else." She didn't look at me. Instead, she stared down at her coffee, playing with the spoon. "I don't want to hurt you anymore. I think we should just end it." And just like that, it was over. All those years, all those memories, gone in a single conversation. I sat there in disbelief, feeling the weight of her words sink in. She wasn't going to fight for us. She wasn't even going to try. After that conversation, I felt a mix of emotions I didn't even know were possible. Anger, sadness, confusion, and a deep sense of loss all rolled into one. There were days when I'd wake up, and for a brief moment, everything felt normal, until I remembered that Jessica was gone, that she had left me for someone else. That's when the wave of pain would hit me all over again. I kept replaying our marriage in my head, trying to figure out where things went wrong. Was it really my fault? Had I been too distant, too focused on work? Or was this something she had been planning all along, slowly pulling away until she found someone else to fill the gap? I didn't know what to believe anymore. My confidence was shattered. I started talking to a therapist, Dr. Matthews, because I couldn't handle it on my own. I thought maybe he could help me make sense of everything, help me figure out how to move forward. During our first session, I told him everything. How perfect Jessica and I seemed in the beginning, how I thought we had it all, and how it all came crashing down the moment I found out about Brad. Dr. Matthews listened carefully, nodding as I talked. When I finally finished, he leaned forward and said, "It's not your fault, you know." I wanted to believe him, but it was hard. Every part of me felt responsible. Jessica had blamed me during our confrontation, and those words stuck with me. Maybe I had failed her in some way. Maybe if I had done things differently, she wouldn't have felt the need to cheat. But Dr. Matthews pushed back. People don't cheat because their partner works late. People cheat because they choose to. It's not about you. It's about her decisions. You can't control what she did, but you can control how you move forward. Those words stayed with me. I couldn't control what Jessica had done, but I could choose how to handle it from here. Moving on was easier said than done. Everywhere I went, something reminded me of Jessica. Our favorite restaurant, the park where we used to walk on weekends, even the grocery store. It all felt tainted by her betrayal. I tried to keep myself busy, throwing myself into work, hanging out with friends, anything to keep my mind off her. But no matter what I did, she was always there in the back of my mind. One night, Mike convinced me to go out for drinks. I wasn't really in the mood, but I figured it was better than sitting at home, dwelling on everything. We went to a bar downtown, and for the first time in weeks, I actually felt a little bit of normalcy creeping back in. We laughed, talked about work, sports, anything but Jessica. That's when Mike said something that stuck with me. You know, this isn't the end for you, man. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You just need to give yourself time. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure if I believed it. How was I supposed to move forward when the woman I had planned my future with had completely destroyed everything? But Mike was right about one thing. I needed time. Time to heal. Time to figure out who I was without Jessica. A few weeks later, the divorce papers arrived in the mail. Seeing her name on those papers, alongside mine, made everything feel real in a way it hadn't before. This wasn't just a breakup. This was the end of our marriage, the end of a life we had built together. Signing those papers felt like admitting defeat, like I was giving up on everything we had worked for. But what choice did I have? Jessica had made it clear that she didn't want to fight for us. She wanted out, and I wasn't going to beg her to stay. I signed the papers that night, feeling a strange sense of closure. It wasn't the ending I had wanted, but it was an ending nonetheless. At least now, I could start to rebuild, piece by piece. After signing the divorce papers, something shifted in me. For the first time in months, I felt a sliver of hope. Maybe Mike was right. Maybe I could move on from this, eventually. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew I had a long road ahead, but I had to believe that there was something better waiting for me. I started focusing more on myself, going to the gym, picking up old hobbies I'd neglected during my marriage, even trying out some new ones. I didn't want Jessica's betrayal to define me. I didn't want to stay stuck in the past, reliving those painful memories over and over again. I wasn't ready to date yet, but the thought of it no longer filled me with dread. I knew it would happen eventually, when the time was right. For now, I just needed to focus on healing and finding out who I was outside of my relationship with Jessica. Just when I thought things were starting to settle down, I got a call from Jessica. It had been weeks since we'd spoken, and hearing her voice on the other end of the line sent a jolt through me. I didn't know what she wanted, but I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. I wanted to check on you." I could feel the anger rising in me again. Now she wanted to check on me? After everything she had done? "I'm fine, Jess," I said coldly. "What do you want?" There was a pause on the other end. "I don't know," she finally admitted. "I guess I've been thinking about us. About everything." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hang up, to tell her I didn't care what she had been thinking about. But another part of me, the part that had loved her for so long, was still curious. "What's there to think about?" I asked. "You made your choice." "I know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. But I didn't realize how much I'd regret it. Jessica's words hung in the air, and I wasn't sure how to respond. For months, I had been the one trying to make things work, the one fighting for our marriage. Now, she was coming back, telling me she regretted her choices. A part of me, maybe the part that was still holding on to the memories of what we used to be, wanted to believe her, to give her another chance. But the other part of me, the part that had been through hell, knew better. "What are you saying, Jess?" I asked cautiously. "I don't know," she replied. I miss you. I miss us." I could feel the temptation creeping in. It would have been so easy to forgive her, to pretend like everything could go back to the way it was before. But I knew it wouldn't be the same. Too much had happened. Too much had been broken. "I don't think it's that simple," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "You hurt me, Jess. You lied to me. You cheated, and you walked away. You don't get to come back now and expect things to just fall into place." She was quiet for a moment. "I know," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve it. I I don't know what I was thinking. I made a mistake, and I wish I could take it all back. Hearing her say that felt like a gut punch. I had wanted those words for so long, but now that they were here, they didn't bring the relief I thought they would. Instead, they just reminded me of how much had been lost. I can't do this, I said firmly. It's too late, Jess. You made your choice, and now I have to make mine. After that phone call, I knew there was no going back. Jessica had tried to come back into my life, but I couldn't let her. I couldn't erase the pain she had caused or forget the way she had betrayed me. Even if part of me still cared about her, I had to choose myself this time. I had to move on. We met one last time to finalize the divorce. It was strange seeing her again, sitting across from her like two strangers who used to know everything about each other. She looked different, tired, maybe even a little sad. But I didn't feel the same pull toward her that I once did. We signed the papers in silence, and when it was over, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said again, her voice shaky. I nodded, not knowing what else to say. "Goodbye, Jess." And that was it. She walked out of my life for the final time, and I let her go. It's been months now since that final goodbye, and I'm still healing, still figuring things out. But one thing I've learned through all of this is that betrayal doesn't define you. It hurts like hell, but it doesn't have to be the end of your story. Looking back, I realized that I was holding on to an image of what Jessica and I used to be, not what we had become. I wasn't seeing the cracks, the problems, or the growing distance. I thought love was enough to fix everything, but it wasn't. You can't make someone stay, and you can't fix what's already broken beyond repair. If I could give any advice to someone going through something similar, it would be this. Don't lose yourself in the pain. Don't let their betrayal define your future. Take the time to grieve, but don't stay stuck in the past. You deserve better, and in time, you'll find it. As for me, I'm still here, still standing, and for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to what comes next.